You and I have been given a purpose. We have been given a stewardship. We have been called into battle. We have a reason to live. We have a reason to die.
God is sovereign over everything, but he is worthy of praise, not just for the creation of the universe, but for the salvation of your soul.
Faith is not a creative thing, a meritorious thing. It's a receptive thing. Faith is not a creator, it's a beholder. It beholds the righteousness of Christ.
Faith will always move us to action, to a life of obedience, to a life of sacrifice, to a life of service, to a committed life that believes that the God who spoke the world out of nothingness is the same God who has promised you life abundant and life eternal, and his promises are true.
You are welcome to this sovereign Savior who has no to-do list by which you might convert his gift of savability into salvation, but who, by his efficacious atonement, has fully accomplished salvation, a salvation to which you need add nothing.
Our faith in who Christ claims to be is our first business.
Our primary assignment must never be compromised. We are called to faithfully preach the word.
Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to the Standard of Truth podcast, soon to be Unshakable with April Chapman. Welcome to the live stream. I forgot to tell you, we are still going to discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. Happy Hump Day. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the show. So glad to see so many of you here this evening. Whether you're watching us on Twitter or Rumble or YouTube or Facebook, I think we're still having some issues with Facebook, but if you're joining us from one of those platforms, welcome. I'm hoping you're having an amazing day. Spring is approaching, you guys. March is flying by so fast. This is actually my birthday month, so I'm kind of excited about that. Last Friday, it was like 40 something degrees. Actually 30 something and in the low 40s in Metro Atlanta. And then y'all, today it was 77 degrees. It was just so beautiful. And so I'm grateful to be in the land of the living. And I have a power-packed show for you this evening. But before we begin, if I can just ask you to do a few housekeeping things, I need you all to like this video, share it with your tribe. We're going to be discussing the recent firing at the Department of Education and all that entails. We're going to dispel some myths that have been propagated in the airwaves about President Trump shutting down the Department of Education. If you let your local pulpit pimp tell it, our children just are not going to be educated at all. We're just going to be walking around with a bunch of stupider children. And so I wanted to do a show to kind of dispel the myths, explain exactly what's happening, and that gives me the perfect opportunity to actually advocate for education and to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is home education and school choice. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We're also going to talk about Sholdon Daniels. He is the congressional opponent to Jasmine Crash Out Crockett. We're going to not talk to him tonight. We are going to talk to him soon, but that's not happening tonight. Tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to just introduce you to this gentleman, and he's got some very important developments, or should I say, information that he has uncovered. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight. And then lastly, for your bonus segment, I added this one at the last minute. One of my subscribers, Brother Delvin Arnold, not sure if you were watching tonight, but I got your email, and I'm going to touch briefly on feminism as a religion. I want to explore that topic and talk to you guys about some information from an article that I read, and we're going to see what God's word has to say about that, because I don't know about you. But the way that we are seeing the rise of women in power today, it is leading me to have a biblically grounded discussion about how feminism probably really is a pseudo religion. So let's not belabor the point. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to talk about these massive cuts where President Trump is moving to fire a huge portion of the Department of Education. Now, he's sending these pink slips, you guys, as if he is Oprah handing out free cars. And while we are not celebrating people losing their livelihoods, we do need to talk about this. We need to have not an emotional discussion about this, but we do need to have a policy discussion about this. Now, of course, the left, they are in complete meltdown, right? We've seen Rachel Maddow. If you haven't, she's had a panel of experts on clutching their pearls and calling this a racial attack on government employees. So the thing about it is, every single decision Donald Trump makes, it is always going to be secretly about race. So it doesn't matter what he does, what type of explanation he provides, the math, he can make the math. It doesn't matter. Race will enter into this discussion. So we're going to break this down. We're going to expose the ridiculousness. And most importantly, I want to talk about how this move is actually, it's going to be a win for parents. It's going to be a win for education, and it is going to be a win for America's future. So the first thing I want to do is I want to play a clip. I want to play several clips, actually. The first one is going to be from, I think we'll go with the Rachel Maddow clip first. This is where she has this so-called educator on making some pretty wild claims about these firings. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let me make sure this is the right one. Here we go.
Employees will begin receiving pink slips as early as this hour, Brett. We have seen rallies today from folks trying to save this agency, as we are told that those employees have been getting emails about these impending cuts for quite some time. Those emails, Brett, include information on severance packages and how to take advantage of buyouts. We're also told the department told the entire workforce to vacate their offices by 6 p.m. tonight over security issues. Now, we don't know if there is an outside or an internal threat. We are watching the building right now, Brett, but you can imagine this is a very, very tense time in Washington right now. As you know, President Trump has many times spoken about shutting this department down entirely, giving states control of education instead.
Meanwhile,
is why so many people are so mad about it, because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry,
no,
I'm really angry about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to hear.
I taught kids in Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, before I get into the Rachel Maddow clip, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of context to kind of explain what's going on. So, the Department of Education, they've been around for a very long time, probably at least 30 years or almost 40. So that's about 4 decades. And what we've realized about the Department of Education is that it has been a bureaucratic disaster, right? So it's bloated, it's ineffective, it has failed to improve educational outcomes. And so Donald Trump, when he campaigned on the idea that he was going to decentralize federal control over education. So what does that mean? That means he's going to gut the bureaucratic swamp. Plain and simple. Meaning, it is not that schools are going to disappear and your kids won't be educated, contrary to what the Bishop of Brimstone over there at Stillbirth has been telling his church members. The idea of eliminating eventually the Department of Education has to do with decentralizing the federal control, meaning it will go back to the states. Believe it or not, this country has not always had a Department of Education. Every state was in charge of educating their own. And what did we know? We know years ago the educational outcomes of people in this country were way better than they are today. Our literacy rate was higher, our graduation rates were higher. We were able to contribute globally on the world stage in a meaningful way because we were cranking out people who couldn't just do the basics, but we were kind of up there competing with the best of them. And now we are like 40th. Okay, amongst all of the developed world. And this is freaking America, right? Like, so how are you America and you are not cranking out the best and the brightest? It is because of the bureaucratic swamp. And that is no matter what color these swamp creatures are. So what I want to do is emphasize, you guys, this is not about race. This is about results. Okay, if you have an NBA team that has like their star player and everyone is saying how wonderful this player is, but he doesn't score any points, he's always the bottom of the scoreboard, eventually what is that team going to do? They're going to be like, listen, we paid a lot of money recruiting you and we don't know what had happened, but you got to go. Why? Because the results are all that matters. This is not about race. It is about results. So, that's the backstory. The exchange that you just witnessed was between Randy Weingarten, who is the head of the teachers union, and she's outraged over these cuts. But y'all, her outrage ain't got nothing to do with kids. She wants you to believe this is about the children, but what this is really about is the administrative state within the Department of Education being eliminated. All these excess jobs that have nothing to do with the boots on the ground and teaching the kids, that's where most of the money is spent. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But this next clip that I wanna show you, it is from a woman on MSNBC who is spouting some very baseless claims. And I want us to talk about it. I saw someone in the live chat asking, why are you, coons always on here down in Black women? And look, let me just address this and get this out the way real quick. I love Black women. I'm a Black woman. I'm raising 2 Black women. My mama's Black. My sister's Black. My aunties are Black. I mean, I just come from a long line, if you haven't noticed, Black women. And so that means that there's an expectation of women who look like me to be of a certain caliber, right? To represent our ethnic expression well out in the world. And when our behavior is less than stellar and less than acceptable, and it's gone on, not an isolated incident. I'm talking about where overwhelmingly the culture is a problem. If I'm a Black woman, because if a white woman says that she can't say nothing because she's going to be deemed racist, who else will take up the charge to hold us accountable and to help us raise ourselves, not to some standard that no one can reach? I'm talking about just the basics. Just the basics. Contrary to what you might believe, I don't just celebrate you because you're Black. Right? That's not a flex. You can't control your ethnic expression and this dermal skin that you're in. You're clothed in this melanin because that is how God wanted you to be born. But your behavior, on the other hand, you absolutely can control that. You can control your behavior. You can reform your behavior. You can do all manner of behavior modification on either end of the spectrum, toward the good or toward the bad. And so if I see so many of my women on the world stage as an embarrassment, that saddens me. And if I didn't love you, I would just ignore your foolishness, distance myself from you and act like it's not happening. No, but love warns. People who love you correct you. People who love you want you to raise yourself to a higher standard. Why? Because contrary to what you might think, the way that we are viewed is viewed as a collective. And I want to contribute something meaningful to the world. And I want the women who look like me to be a positive representation of the women I know we can be. So that's the reason why. But now, if you don't like it, maybe you on the wrong live stream. You might want to go over there with Roland Martin and get some effeminate political commentary, but you're not going to find that over here. So, like I said, let's go ahead and get into this Rachel Maddow clip. I'm interested in showing you that because the woman in this clip is going to spout a baseless claim that we must discuss. We absolutely must discuss it. And so let's go ahead and do that now.
This is from NPR on the Trump administration's announcement tonight that they're firing 1,300 people from the U.S. Department of Education. Quote, AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees, Local 252, a union that represents Education Department employees, released a statement in which its president, Sharia Smith, said, "We will fight these draconian cuts." Minutes later, AFGE Local 252 told NPR that Sharia Smith was laid off, along with all 5 of the chapter's other union officers. Joining us now is Sharia Smith. She's president of a union representing 2,800 employees at the Education Department. She served our country as an attorney for the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights until this evening. Ms. Smith, thank you so much for being here on Tonight of All Nights. I am sorry for what you're going through.
Thank you so much, Rachel. My coworkers and I from all over the country really appreciate the platform you're giving us to talk about this.
Is it the case that your whole office is being closed and your colleagues, all of your colleagues at your office are being fired as well, the whole thing?
You know, that's so interesting that you asked the question about our whole office. So we've reviewed the list of people who are set to be laid off. And I also listened to Secretary McMahon's statement about how they're keeping the good people. The people that they seem to be keeping are white men who happen to have graduated from very conservative schools. Not to say that they're not good. I think all of my coworkers are excellent. Many of them are members. But the coworkers that are being laid off as well are also good. What is curious in the U.S. Department of Education is that the layoffs, the mass terminations, the administrative leaves are seeming to affect and impact disproportionately women and people of color. And the Department of Education should be a model employer. And I want American people to think about, do they want their employer to follow this model where the only people that are deemed good enough to keep their jobs and their ability to support their families are people who are from a certain race and are of a certain gender.
All right. So I wanted to show that clip, and I was writing down some notes as she was speaking. So this woman represents some of the officers at the administrative level who are also part of the teachers union, whose jobs are being cut. Now, this is not a surprise. We knew this was coming. I just told you that the bureaucratic swamp, the administrative aspect of the Department of Education is being gutted. Why? Because one, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of bureaucracy. It's top heavy. And we are trying to ultimately eliminate the Department of Education. And I'm gonna talk about why that is necessary. I'm going to build my case for that thesis statement that I've just made. But before we do that, I notice how she's wearing, well, y'all can't see it unless I put the screen back up there. So let me go ahead and do it. If you look at her pen says, "We must be supported." Now, oftentimes I think this is interesting because education is supposed to be about educating our children. But this advocacy pen that she's wearing, and I could be wrong, but it sounds as if she is referring to herself and her colleagues that must be supported. Last time I checked, it's supposed to be about the educational outcomes of our children, which we already know are not good. The outcomes are not good and we're not performing well. And so before we are going to advocate for you, we first need to look at your results, which are the children. And if the performance of the children do not reflect what it should be, we've got to look at and try to identify the reasons why. And so I even just disagree on the outset of the pen, like we must be supported. On what basis? Why? Why must we support you? So that's the first thing that I noticed. Then she indicates the basis of her claim is that when she's looking around and she's noticing these cuts, that the individuals who are all being dismissed happen to be women and people of color. She makes this claim, and I thought it was interesting that she's on MSNBC spouting this claim, and it's because Rachel Maddow has an agenda. She's the white liberal lesbian counterpart to Joy Reid. So you're always, at least when you take in MSNBC's information, you kind of need to take it in as propaganda, right? She's always going to give credence to anyone who wants to pass the baton in the Victim Olympics. So my question is, why doesn't Rachel press her on this assertion, right? Like, what evidence does this woman have to support this claim other than this anecdotal, we're just supposed to take her word for it, right? Like, I'd like to see the evidence to support this. And in fact, she also said, she's like, well, the people who are just being dismissed are good, and all of my colleagues are good. And my question is, good by what standard? By what standard are you assessing that they're good? Because if everyone was just phenomenal and doing their job and the outcomes were favorable, then no one would be getting cut, right? Like, people, this is how it works in the private sector. People don't just dismiss you and eliminate departments that are either generating revenue or providing the results that they have set out to provide. Like, if something's working and it's working well and it's performing phenomenally, it's not going anywhere, right? So I get it. We can pull out the little baby violin, right? We can have a whole rub your back kumbaya session. But when you make the statement and you say, I don't understand why we're treating this like the private sector because everybody's good by what standard? What evidence do you have to support that you and your colleagues are good? One, these are all administrators. What is the purpose what is your role, the purpose, and can we do without it? We are in a crisis right now in the sense that we've got industries that are suffering because we don't have the strong academic prowess within America to be able to fill these positions. And I'm going to explain to you exactly why the left likes it this way. I'm always talking about how the left is the party of slavery. Well, now I am considering the educational bureaucracy. It is the new form of slavery. And they're just like the Democrats were whining and crying at the thought of abolishing slavery. This educational sector, they are going to boo-hoo, whine, and cry at the thought of abolishing the Department of Education because it serves a greater purpose. And we're going to talk about that a little later. However, what I'm noticing when she makes this claim about the individuals who are being dismissed, how they're all female and of color, she hasn't proven that. But what I have noticed that when we've seen these protests outside of the Department of Education, the ones raising the most ruckus over all of this, as I've seen, has been white women and spineless, effeminate men. You've had a few blacks sprinkled in, but unless we can see a breakdown of these layoffs by ethnicity, we can't make such an assertion, right? But let's just go with it and say that it's true. And I'm not saying it's not true. What I'm saying is we haven't seen the evidence, but are we leaving room for the possibility that since the Department of Education, they spend over 60% of the budget on the administrative aspect of education, and sadly, a lot of women happen to be in education, perhaps she is right. But even still, guess what? Don't nobody care. You know why we don't care? We don't care because the results are trash. And that's the truth that no one has told you to your face. That's the truth that America needs to hear. We need to hear it out loud. The results are trash, right? So either you can boast that you have all of these people of color and that are women in administrative positions and they suck at their jobs, and that's why they're being fired, or you can be embarrassed that you have all of these people of color that are female in these administrative jobs and they suck at their jobs, and that's why they're being fired. Like, either way, regardless of which way you look at it and which one's gonna make you feel better, the results don't lie. They don't lie. The results are the results. So I want to talk about the real issue. I want to talk about the real issue, which is school choice and parents' rights. Because, see, we've seen a lot of these administrative level educators whining and crying about how this is hurting them, right? And one of them are going to dry snitch and tell on themselves. Matter of fact, did I play that aspect of the clip already? Let me see. I might need to play that. Or I may have played it already. Let me see. Did I play the part, you guys, where there were two women talking about what was going to happen with the money? Let's play the clip again and see, because I can't remember. I got premenopausal brain. I really can't remember if that aspect of the clip, was it this part? No. Oh, let me get it. Okay, that's not it. I'm going to pull it up, and at least I thought I pulled it up. I didn't pull it up. I don't have time. It's a clip where Randy Weingarten is talking about, she's so outraged that these cuts are happening, and she told on herself and said the quiet part out loud. She said that we already know what they're going to do with the money. They're going to give it back to the states. And she was talking specifically about Texas. And do you know what she said, you guys? She said they're going to send it back to the states. And you know what Texas is going to do? It's going to vouchers, right? And then the person she was talking to was like, yup, it's going to go to private schools and religious schools and the voucher program. Y'all, they are upset. They are upset that parents are actually going to have some rights, and they're actually going to have opportunity, real opportunity at school choice. And so we have to talk about that, because I told you, liberals love slaves, right? The whole party, the Democrat Party, are slaves, are masters looking for slaves. And Democrats, by and large, are slaves looking for masters. And I'm going to prove it. We don't need cotton. We don't need tobacco. The type of slavery I'm talking about, it is an ideological slave. And one type of plantation is the educational system. The educational system is an ideological plantation, and their job is to keep you on that plantation no matter what, because it's useful to them. Because if your kids are ignorant, uneducated, unable to compete, right? They'll continue to vote against their own interests. Why? Because they don't know any better, right? They'll continue to vote them in office and give them the money. They like it this way. It works to their advantage. So what I want to talk about now, which is the real issue, which is school choice and parents' rights. We need to talk about that, because what does that really mean for education in America? We've got the Department of Education. They've been around for over 40 years, and they've had the sole job of educating our children. And they've had 40 years to prove themselves, and yet test scores have plummeted. Literacy rates are embarrassing, and millions of American kids, especially minority ones, right? They are trapped in failing schools. I have told my own personal story on this platform plenty of times about the day my mama came to that public school and said, I'm pulling her out. I've already enrolled her into a charter school in Spanish Harlem. I need her records. And they tried to hold my records hostage and told my mother, you can't do that. I mean, it was with a very condescending tone. Like, Where this little ghetto woman think that she taking this child? No, you ain't taking her out of this school district. No, sirree. She gonna stay right here. And if she doesn't report to school, we're gonna report her as a truant. And my mother had to fight to get me off of that ideological education plantation to give me a better opportunity. So if we already know that minority kids are trapped in failing schools and parents are struggling to advocate for their own children, President Trump is doing what needs to be done, which is shifting the power. He's shifting the power away from Washington bureaucrats, away from the teachers union, and he's giving it back to the states. And ultimately, parents are gonna win. And I want to explain to you, I've got some clear examples of how this is already working, right? Let's look at Florida. For example, Governor Ron DeSantis, he expanded the school choice programs through education savings accounts, ESAs. And what this does, this allows parents to use their own tax dollars. Would you look at that? Taxation, in my opinion, is theft. But wait a minute. Parents in Florida get to use their own tax dollars to send their children to schools, and the schools actually educate them, not indoctrinate them. You mean educate? Yes, that is correct. What is the result? The result is that more kids excelling in academics, you have better, higher graduation rates, and then you get higher parent satisfaction. That's what we should be talking about. You never hear any of these administrative level educators talking about that. All they are worried about are themselves and their jobs versus saying we've had 40 years to prove ourselves and what we're doing is not working. What we're doing is not working. So now let's zoom out a bit and let's talk about the real problem, right? The real problem is actually the Department of Education itself. That's the issue. If this agency had been so committed to equity and fairness, why are Americans' public schools still failing, right? Why are the test scores dropping? Why are so many children functionally illiterate after years in these government-run institutions? Do you know how many teachers I've talked to that have said they absolutely wanted to get out of education because of how bad things are? Information in terms of how these students are to be taught comes down from the federal level. What happens is teachers in the classroom, their hands are tied. If they're like, listen, I found a whole better way to teach these children X, they have to teach the way they are mandated to teach. If not, they don't get the money. So that means it's not just the academics, it's all of these other ideological things that come in. And I know I have educators that are either in this live chat or watch this show, and they have personally told me this. They're like, I'm so done, I can't wait to retire. Because the truth is, the Department of Education, they have failed to improve educational outcomes. We've thrown enough money at it. The massive increases in funding has not helped. We are throwing billions of dollars into a system that prioritizes political agendas over academic excellence. How do we know this? Because the teachers union, they're the ones that are fighting so hard against this. It's not your local second grade teacher that went into this because she just loved the kids. She is feeling it because she's like, you know what? I got into this profession because I love these kids. But now that I'm in this profession, these administrators don't care. They don't give a darn about these kids. They got me passing little Jimmy, and I know little Jimmy can't read. This curriculum and this Common Core stuff is stupid. And why am I teaching little Jimmy and talking to him about gender ideology when he can't read? Why are we discussing that? Why are these books in the library, right? So here's a thought to ponder. Why does the Department of Education need to be dismantled? That's the question that I wanted to raise tonight. So, in my opinion, the Department of Education absolutely needs to go. Why? It is not just for financial reasons. right? We can go through budgets and slash and burn all day long, but this is deeper than the money. Yes, I do believe too much money is being given, but it's because the department itself is an obstacle to real education reform. We can't reform it in its current state. We got to tear it down and start from scratch. Send it back to the states like it used to be. They've wasted billions of dollars and they have failed students. So, how is that so? Let me break down to you the money, right? The Department of Education has an annual budget of $80 billion. $80 billion. Do you know what percentage of that goes toward the students? 60% goes to the administration. So that means only the students are getting 40%. If it's all about the kids, I'm sorry, if it was 40% to the admin and 60 to the students, you might have an argument, but that's not the numbers. The math states that 60% of that goes to the administration. So despite federal oversight, these test scores have flatlined or declined. They're not getting better. The methods are getting worse. And the U.S. spends more money per student than any developed nation, but we rank below them in literacy and math. Why is it that in barely developed countries where their kids are learning on a dirt floor barefoot have better academic outcomes than our school students who sit in air-conditioned schools with metal detectors, but it's air-conditioned nonetheless? You can spend $26,000 per student in Baltimore and none of them can read. The reason why is because the Department of Education, they are protecting teachers unions, not students. Okay? So you got teachers unions, you got like the AFT and the NEA, huge, massively huge influence over the education policy. They fight against school choice. Why? Because they know they can't compete. So the goal is we got to keep your kid in a failing, underperforming school so we can protect our power. How is it about the children if you know the school is failing and you want to keep them in there? That is the highest form of hatred if I've ever seen it. This is why I call the education system a modern day slave plantation. It just doesn't have any cotton on it. Remember, these unions, these are the unions that push for extended school closures during COVID. All of them wanted to get paid. When it was clear that these kids were at low risk, open up the schools. All of that lost learning that we had, that decision had devastating effects on the educational outcomes of these kids, especially the minority and the low-income students, but they didn't care. They didn't care. Not only that, you have this ideological indoctrination that I've talked about. That is one of the main driving forces behind Common Core. You have the gender ideology in the classrooms and that DEI-based hiring and curriculum policies that's teaching the white kids that they're the oppressor and teaching black kids that they're not, white privilege and oppressing. They're basically teaching Marxism in the schools. I didn't grow up learning no foolishness like that. And I was that kid. Had I heard my teacher try to teach me some foolishness like that, I would have been the first one to be like, respectfully, you sound crazy. And I know I'm about to get kicked out and sent to the principal's office, but my daddy told me to stand up for what is right. And what I'm saying is right and what you're saying is wrong. And now I'm probably going to get a beating, because ain't no way you're going to tell me that Jane sitting next to me on the basis of her white skin has privilege over me. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? That is the type of mess that's being taught in these schools, and it's pushed by the unions, the teachers' unions, because they in bed with the freak nasty people. Have you seen Randy Weingarten? Do you see that? That's who's teaching your kids. Oh, she's all about the rainbow cult. All about it. I think she's married to a woman, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize, but I'm just saying. This is who's leading the largest teachers union in the country. So, you have that. They're the ones that push for the lockdown. Not only that, another reason, you have federal involvement in education. They've turned these schools into indoctrination centers. These are not places of learning. Your kids are going to school to be indoctrinated. I know parents that are like, I don't even know my kid anymore because she comes home. I saw a TikTok of a white mom who has a biracial daughter, and the biracial daughter was on the TikTok calling her mother an oppressor. She was calling her mother an oppressor because her mother voted for Donald Trump. And when her mother told her that you need to spend some time, you need to get off Facebook or social media, she was like, because you sound crazy. Now she was saying that this has impacted her mental health and she needed a mental health day. I mean, it's just, listen, the bottom line is that the Department of Education is expensive. It is ineffective, and it is harmful, and all of this can be proven. And so if all of this can be proven, I would argue that it's time for education to return back to the states and local control, because the Constitution doesn't give the federal government authority to run education anyway. It belongs to the states and the parents. How this department came to be, I do not know, but it needs to go away. And I have some solutions. I don't just say, here's the problem, burn it all down, and then I don't have any meaningful information to share with you about the solution. My solution that we already know is proven to work is allow the free market to fix education. Like, let's talk about the solutions. Because when you introduce competition into education, something happens. Standards rise. Now, we know the teachers' unions don't want that, but it's just common sense. We've seen this happen in other states where it has been successful. That's why I apologize, you guys. I did not show you the clip, but Randy was going on saying, we already know when they send it back to the states, what Texas is going to do, they're going to send it to the charter schools. And basically, it's going back to the parents. And since the government believes that they share custody of your child with them. Like, and I'm always telling y'all, do not share custody of your children with the government. They think they own your children. Those are their children. Every butt in a seat is a dollar sign for them. And so the idea that private schools and charter schools and home schools, which all have proven to be superior alternatives, they can't have that. They don't want you to have access to better outcomes at a fraction of the cost. They're like, no, we can't maintain power if the money is given back to the states. And the thing is, when parents control the money, schools have to earn their trust rather than it being forced compliance. Like, so when I was growing up, instead of me being forced to go to my neighborhood school, which was already performing very horribly, and my mother didn't want me to go there, she pulled me out. They were fighting to keep me in because my test scores, I mean, I'm not bragging, y'all, but I ranked high in the district, okay? I got little awards. I still got them awards. They mean a lot to me. But they're like, if we lose this student, this is going to impact the numbers. They did not care about me flourishing as a student. They were like, she can't leave because she's useful to us. And my mother said, well, you about to find out today, because if I had to come back in that office and yank those records out of that file cabinet myself, watch me do it. And it almost came down to that. Thank God it didn't, because I think they were afraid. But there are too many states that have embraced school choice. They have seen remarkable improvements with those who are stuck in the federal system, who allow it to continue. We've seen the opposite happen with students who are allowed to get out. And let's not talk about the homeschool community. Right? That was once considered fringe. These freak nasties are teaching so much nasty stuff in the schools, and the indoctrination and the bullying and all the other things that are just out of control. Homeschooling the numbers have just astronomically increased because parents saw during the pandemic, they saw what the public schools were teaching and they were not impressed. On top of the fact Parents didn't appreciate being called domestic terrorists for advocating for their own children. Do you guys remember in Virginia when parents who went to school board meetings like, why is this book in my kid's school? Like, why is my kid learning how to, do unsavory things on other people's appendages in the school? And Biden's administration labeled these parents as domestic terrorists. And you want to talk about a tyrant? Don't get me started. You don't really want to have this conversation. You really don't. But the point is, education should not be a government monopoly. But the reason why leftists like it, because they love big government, because they're Marxist-minded and communistic in thought. The idea of functioning in your freedom and being given the opportunity to make your own choice goes against their worldview. You would think they would understand this, but they don't. Because they don't understand free markets and they actually hate capitalism, they can't even apply this concept to education, right? Education should be driven by competition, innovation, and parental choice. I was watching CNN and Kevin O'Leary attempted to make this point. And the little soy boy, I can't remember his name. Was it Bakari? He's arguing with Kevin O'Leary, a millionaire, mind you, who came out of the education sector. And Kevin O'Leary is trying to make this dude understand America's educational outcomes are just not good. We need competition in this. Unleash it, give it back to the states, allow parents to make choices for themselves. And this man argued and said that that was a bad idea. And do you know what his excuse was? His excuse was for why we can't do this is because the reason why these kids can't learn is because they're hungry. He said the reason why these kids are not learning is because they're hungry. So if we take this money from the federal level out, the free lunch and the free breakfast, I was like, there go that socialist, Marxist-minded foolishness again. I said, you mean to tell me in a nation that has the highest obesity rate amongst elementary and adolescent students, you really trying to tell me these kids are hungry? Is that it? They're not learning because they're hungry? Hear me clearly. I am not saying that childhood hunger is not a thing. I am not saying that there are not some students that actually do go to school hungry. My argument is that education is not a social service function. It is not the education department's job to feed your children. We have to figure out a way, right, for parents to be able to earn a living and to provide and take care of their children. And good parents don't starve their children. Now, there are some parents that are just trash parents that don't care if their kids live or die. But the argument that the kids ain't learning because they hungry, as fat as these kids are, was just stupid. I was like, anyway, I don't even want to get on that. Let's talk about what happens next, right? Since we realize that the test scores have flatlined or declined, what is the next move? I'm going to tell you, the media is going to continue lying about this. They're going to continue to scream racism. Why? Because they can't defend the Department of Education's record. That's why. So the truth is this. Trump is making the right move. Yes, it is going to hurt. You may have a loved one that works in the administrative aspect of the Department of Education, and they may be losing their job. But just like in the private sector, when they do mass layoffs, when a department is no longer needed and they're restructuring, the government is at a point where if we don't do something, our kids are not going to make it. And that is going to mean a masculine man has to make a decision, not predicated on how he feels, but on what's best for the greater good of everyone. So yes, 1,000 or 1,300 people are going to have to lose their job because those are jobs that they weren't necessary to begin with. Perhaps they should take their gifts, skills, and talents, if they're so inclined, and go back to the states where they came from and apply for a job there. Go to your local. But see, the thing is, you got all this money and these administrators making these six figures. I thought it was all about the children. If it was all about the children, why not go and serve the children and just go be a teacher then if it's really all about the children? Well, it's not, but I'm just saying. The Department of Education, in my opinion, it's an unnecessary federal overreach. Parents, not bureaucrats, should have the power to decide how their own children are educated, right? Because school choice works. The numbers prove it, the outcomes prove it, and it just makes sense to go where the results are. And so I'm interested in hearing from you guys. Do you think Trump's move on the goal is for Linda McMahon's job to be obsolete? Do your job so well, Linda, that at the end of the day, we get to close the department down. The states now get the money. Here's the deal that y'all didn't know. 20% of the money from the federal government that's going to go back to the states, that's how they're going to unleash and give parents the money that they need for school choice. The reason why a lot of the states are not doing school choice now is because the federal government as it stands now won't give the states that money, because they're like, if you do school choice, you can't get this money. But now, first of all, this is our money. Give us our money. We're going to get that 20%. It's going to come back into the states. And you know who's going to get it? Parents. So how many kids you got? Oh, we're going to give, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number, $10,000 per child per year. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to be a good steward over that money. At the end of the day, the Department of Education have not been a good steward over the $80 billion that they get annually. And so the jig is up now. Cry me a river, Randy Weingarten, or whatever your name is. It's over. It is over. You can cry racism all you want. You know what's racist? Keeping minority kids in failing schools and not giving them the opportunity to do something better. We want access and we want it now. And that's all I have to say about that. So, the next topic. I know y'all been waiting for this one. Actually, I don't even have notes for this one because I'm sweating bullets. It is so hot. Let me get to these super chats and then we're going to talk about the discovery. The discovery that Sholdon Daniels has unleashed, and I want to make sure that my audience is well aware of it. I have the opportunity tomorrow afternoon to interview Sholdon Daniels. We're doing a pre-recorded interview. It won't be live, but Lord willing, if I get done with the interview in time, I will release it tomorrow. But I'm so excited to sit down with Mr. Daniels because, y'all, I have been wanting an exceptionally masculine man to run against this woman so bad. So yes, this is personal for me. It is personal for me. And so we're going to talk about that, but let's get to these super chats first. Let's do this. Hold on. I don't want you guys to feel like I'm ignoring you. Hey, Measured Man, how are you? Grace and peace to you. Thank you so much for your super chat. Measured Man says, thank you, April. Can't wait for Sholdon's interview. As a community, it is time for us to reset expectations. Well, Measured Man, your request, I am going to oblige. Tomorrow at 12 noon, I'll be sitting down with Sholdon Daniels. He is the congressional opponent in the congressional, the 30th congressional district in Texas, South Dallas to be specific, that is running against Jasmine Crash Out Crockett. And so I'm gonna sit down with him and I'm going to ask him all of the questions that I'm sure you guys want the answer to, and I will introduce him to you guys and give you guys an opportunity to support. He needs our support now more than ever because Jasmine has, she got that Alex Soros money, okay? The freak nasty money that allows her to push open borders and cake for trans rights more than your rights. Yeah, she's got that kind of money. So it's going to be important at the grassroots level for us to make a major statement, even though you don't have to live in Dallas in order to support this candidate. But I want to see him do well. So we're absolutely going to interview him tomorrow. What else do we have? We have Emmy. Hi. Emmy says, good evening, Mrs. Chapman. How are you? Sis, I'm hot. I am hot. These lights, are hot. Y'all, I labor under these hot lights every week because I love y'all. But it's hot. I'm just being honest. You asked me how I was feeling. It was a great day today. But in this moment, right now, sis, yeah, I'm hot. I sure am. Why does the chat button keep disappearing like that? I don't know. Let's see if we can fix that. Hey, Sister Ruth. Good to see you. Thank you so much for that super chat. Hopefully you're doing well. Sister Ruth says, April, too many kids can't read. Listen, I know they can't read. They can't pass these basic minimum skills tests. And they like it that way. I told y'all the educational system is the modern day plantation. There is no cotton on this plantation, but they have to keep you trapped on it. And anytime you try to function in your freedom, they're going to try to snatch you back. And ask me how I know. They tried to snatch me back. And my mother, she had to fight to make sure that we functioned in our freedom. And it wasn't easy. But just because you experience opposition doesn't mean you're not doing the right thing. It just means you need to push a little harder. And that's what we had to do. So, Mr. G, how are you? Mr. G says, train up a child in the way he should go. Apparently, they want to train up our children to be done. I'm telling you, they really think that they are co-parents. They co-parent your children. They do it 8 hours a day, overstepping their boundaries. The way it's set up now, particularly with the gender ideology being pressed in the school system and the idea that your kid can transition and they are not allowed to tell you, that's wild to me. That is wild to me. And I knew back in 2007 when I was pregnant with my first son, I was like, yeah, we're not going to be able to put him. He was going to be my child. And I know how I was built. I was like, he ain't going to be built to go to ain't no way. So it was a sacrifice. In those early years, it was a sacrifice for me to be home and to home educate my children, but I wouldn't have it any other way. They want a vacation, a purse, or a pair of shoes that was worth me handing them over to Caesar and then being shocked and confused when they came home as Romans. So I did without. You can look through my Facebook timeline and you could see I was doing without. It wasn't no glam. Just little lip gloss. My hair was natural, so there was no relaxer. There was no touch up. It was none of that. It was, is this a need or is this a want? Because I got homeschool curriculum to buy. You just do without for the sake of the children. It's just what you do. It's just how it is. But it was worth it. But Ziana, hi. How are you, Ziana K? She said there are second grade teachers. I'm sorry, come again. Making $90,000 in my district. See, listen. Here's what I'll say about that. Good teachers should be paid well. But the caveat in that statement is that good teachers. I don't have a problem paying teachers that are getting results and whose children, their students, are performing well. But just blanketly paying somebody $90,000 a year to teach the second grade is crazy. That is wild to me. Now, some of these school districts, it's more like a zoo. So it's probably hazard pay. But it should not be this way. If we were allowed to have some sort of disciplinary structure in school, like when I was growing up, listen, my kindergarten teacher put the fear of God in me. I think I was more afraid of my kindergarten teacher than I was my own daddy. Because I seen Mr. Miller pick up a chair and haul it across the room and then fling a boy. Like he flung a whole child across the room and little buddy, he hit the blackboard. Listen, he had no problems out of me. I was just like, oh no, school means you sit like this and you do what you told. You do what you're told. I was not about to be 5 flying across the no. I seen that one time and that's all I needed to see. Now, I'm not saying it was right. And I do believe Mr. Miller had some anger issues. I do. But Jamel needed it. That boy was just bad. He was like spawned. I don't think he was born. That boy was spawned. That's how misbehaved this boy was. And so Mr. Miller had to let him know who was the alpha in the classroom. And probably about after a week and them going back and forth, we ain't had no more problems out of Jamel. Yeah, but he was bad. Oh, he was bad. But anyway, in this second segment, y'all, we gotta talk about Sholdon Daniels, the Texas Congressional opponent of Jasmine Crash Out Crockett. And so what I want to do to kind of lay the foundation for this is I came across a TikTok video that sparked my interest. Matter of fact, I think it was Marshall. Marshall is like the co-producer of this show. Most of the clips that I get and the content that I do comes from Marshall because Marshall keeps it coming. He always keeps the content fresh. And so I saw this TikTok and it caught my attention because I just recently did a video on Jasmine Crockett, and I just did it from a content creation perspective where I don't like congressional behavior that embarrasses the culture. Y'all can say what y'all want. I don't care about what everybody else is doing, right? Just like when you have your children and you like that, I'm not their mama. That's not my concern. My concern is, why are you acting a fool? That's how I approached this situation. So she is a liberal and she is a Democrat. And by and large, most liberal Democrats that are female are very feminist in nature. And so their worldview is just skewed off the rip, right? But when I saw this TikTok, it raised some questions, and then I started digging some more, and then I saw another video. So what we're going to do is let me first share this TikTok that I found that I thought was super interesting. As soon as it decides that it's going to open up, here we go. And let's play the clip.
Jasmine Crockett, looks like you're in some deep, deep troubles, as Sholdon Daniels has come online and reported that you have taken political contributions from an elderly couple who are retired in the sum of $16,000. And Sholdon took it a step further and went to their house to confirm if they knew that they made these political contributions to Jasmine's campaign. In turn, his wife, who answered the door, said she knew nothing about them ever paying anything to her campaign. And when Sholdon asked to speak with her husband, he was out of town on his way to Colorado. So he left the paperwork with them to show them the receipts and went on about his day. But something is fishy. I smell a fish fry for sure. Maybe that's why Jasmine thinks it's necessary to Kendrick Lamar herself down the hall of the Congress with her tongue sticking out. Maybe it's all a play and a distraction from the fraudulent stuff that she's really involved in.
So hopefully you guys were able to hear that. I had to edit that video and increase the volume on it because it was really, really low. So hopefully, hopefully you guys were able to hear that. And so this was the TikTok that got me to thinking. I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean a $16,000 campaign contribution from a retired couple that don't know nothing about it? Now, the other day I did a video on Act Blue and how there have been a lot of issues with Act Blue, which is the payment processing fundraising arm of the Democrat Party, where there have been a lot of people, particularly older, elderly ones who are either not paying attention or are retired, where there have been these small dollar amounts in multiple frequencies given to certain politicians in these people's names, and the people are unaware. They're like, I never gave this money. In the video that I did the other day, there was this woman. She was like, well, I am a Democrat and I'm pro Kamala. And I didn't give that money, but I'm not trying to help Trump. So, she didn't care either way. Like I said, these people ain't got no principles. So we really wouldn't expect her to feel some sort of kind of way. When you are wicked and you are trained in wickedness, you don't even care that wickedness is being done on your behalf because you're wicked, right? So, that was uneventful. But what I'm noticing is that this is a trend and a pattern with the vast majority of these George Soros-backed politicians. And so I find it interesting that Jasmine has a lot of smoke and a lot of bravado for Elon Musk, saying Elon Musk steals and $5,000. And what is that going to do? And that's not going to hardly do anything. She is very much trying to put up a smoke screen. She's trying to put up a smoke screen so that no one is really paying attention to, one, how is your net worth what it is? Two, where is your money coming from? Why are you actually advocating for policies that are bad for your community, such as open borders, right? That is like, why are you like so? She's a member of the Equality Caucus, which is the LGBT caucus. So she's Congressional Black Caucus and Equality Caucus, but she spends a lot of time advocating for the trans community. And in her words, the trans community, they're not going anywhere. And then she tried to hitch trans rights to civil rights. And I told y'all that was the Trojan horse. We want to, revere these civil rights heroes of yesteryear. But what y'all don't know is that these civil rights heroes were always on the LGBT train. That is not new. And it was like Obama was just the advent of that. That's when it came out the closet. But Bayard Rustin was a sodomite. He was one of the right-hand men of MLK. There were several known homosexuals, Nikki Giovanni. Like, the LGBTQ community was always hitched to the civil rights struggle. It's just back then they couldn't be as outright with it, even though everybody knew that everybody knew all about Bayard Rustin's past. And the reason why the LGBTQ rainbow cult has always been a part of civil rights, but it's just now being discovered by us. We know that to be the case because if you look at the NAACP, they advocate for this type of thing now. I don't know if you guys were aware, but Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, they did a whole documentary on Bayard Rustin. Like, why would they be interested in profiling a homosexual civil rights worker? And when you watch the documentary, they actually celebrate his sodomy and hail him as a hero, that he was a trailblazer. And, it was about the struggle, but it was more about him living his authentic self, right? And I also thought it was interesting. I can't prove this, but I watched that documentary. And I know this doesn't have anything to do with Sholdon. We're going to get to Sholdon in a minute. But in the documentary of Bayard Rustin, there's this character that I believe the person, I don't believe the character is fictional, but the name they gave him in the documentary is fictional. He's a pastor that Bayard Rustin ends up having a thing for. And they end up having this secret relationship, and Bayard is encouraging him to be his authentic self and to live in his truth and to stop suppressing who he really is. And they show this pastor battling this world of being a pastor with a wife and a baby on the way and already having children, with this lure, this pull on his heartstrings to want to be a homosexual and to live in his authentic truth. I thought it was funny that they painted this individual as a pastor. And I can't prove who that pastor is, but I have some thoughts of who it might be, based on some context clues and some information that has come out about, some of the sexual proclivities of some of these civil rights leaders. I got a feeling I know who it is, but the way that the documentary frames it, they don't explicitly name this person, but I'll leave that to your imagination. But what I want to do now is I want you guys to hear from Sholdon. I want you to hear from him because he's going to explain. He is going to explain what he discovered, and we're going to walk alongside him as he explains it to us.
All right, guys. So I'm about to go to Randy Best's house, introduce myself, and just ask them straight up if they contributed to Jasmine's campaign, if they contributed that amount, and why they like her so much, because I might be able to learn a little bit of something while I'm up here. I'm way up here in Collin County. I'm in Plano, Texas, very far from TX30. It's very peculiar that somebody up here would give that much money to a candidate in our district. Maybe they have a special connection to the district. Let's go find out. I'm not gonna film them. I'm not gonna put any faces or anything on there. I'm just gonna have my camera down at the ground. I'm gonna be standing in a public, area in open air. I'm just, recording what's going on around me. Let's see what happens. Here's the house. Here's the house right here. Here we go. How do you do, ma'am?
No soliciting.
I'm not here. I'm not a solicitor. I'm attorney Sholdon Daniels.
Okay.
Is there a Randy Best who lives here?
That's my husband.
Yeah. I just want to verify. Are you guys aware that you were charged over $16,000 last year? Yeah.
What?
I have a list of charges. I'm just here to verify that you guys know about this. $16,240 in political contributions to a candidate named Jasmine Crockett. Do you remember that at all? Does your husband remember that at all?
I don't know. He's on the road on his way to Colorado.
Okay. It says here that he's not employed. Is he employed now?
No, we're retired.
Okay. I can leave this with you if you want. It's got your information on it.
Yeah, you can just leave it on the table.
Yes, ma'am. You mind if I take a picture?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Okay, guys, so I just drove by the home of this Randy Best guy. This guy, he's a 73-year-old retiree, unemployed. He and his wife, I guess they just travel around in an RV or something. I don't know, but he's on the road. His wife answered the door. She said that they had no idea what these charges were, and they had no idea that they were charged $16,000 or that they are responsible for $16,000 in political contributions to Jasmine Crockett. Yet she has them listed as political contributors. Now, mind you, I'm way up here in Plano. I'm in a totally different county. I'm in Collin County right now. The only reason why I'm even able to do this is because I practice law all over North Texas and I drive all over, so I know North Texas very well. Collin County, Dallas County, Tarrant County, Denton County, Grayson County. A lot of shady stuff going on with Jasmine Crockett, and I see why she was doing all this, because she's trying to distract from the corruption. I wonder how deep it goes. I wonder how deep it goes.
DanielForUs.com. You guys, I'm thoroughly excited to interview Mr. Daniels. He is a father. He is a veteran. He is a lawyer. He's a well-accomplished, masculine, exceptional man. And the reason why I'm stressing that is because I firmly believe that one way to kind of turn the tide in our culture, and a lot of you may not like this, and that's okay. You'll be fine. I do believe we've got too much matriarchal squalor. And when I say matriarchal squalor, it's going to lead into the next segment that I'm going to discuss on feminism. We've allowed too much of the matriarchy to grab the reins and to be in charge. And what we have found is that it has not just led our communities astray, it has led our nation astray. Matriarchal squalor is this term that I use to describe a whole lot of estrogen feminine leadership that unfortunately is full of emotion, low on positive results, and it's absent of any sort of male leadership or headship. And so, because everything is so out of order and it's such a heavy imbalance, we are finding that our homes are a mess, which in turn causes our communities to be a mess, which in turn just causes the culture to go in a direction that is less than favorable. And so to have a man desire to serve in this capacity and to run against Jasmine Crockett in an effort to unseat her, I believe this is a wonderful time for us to experience something like this, because there are a lot of individuals in the culture that agree with me that Jasmine is not a good representation to send to Capitol Hill. She is just, we can focus on her policies. And when we overwhelmingly look at the policies that she supports, like most Black women, they are very far left progressive. And far left progressivism is not good for the Black community. It's not good for human flourishing. And overall, it's just not good for the country. It is the policies for me, the wholesale womb assassination, the support of LGBTQ rights over and above. Like, homosexuals do not have rights that no one else has. It is the special rights that they are advocating for that I believe has created a very unhealthy obsession with sexual perversion. I don't need to know who you sleep with. I don't need to know who you're attracted to, right? But for some reason, the left is obsessed with this, and it's because the people that fund their campaigns are nasty and perverted, and they're demonic and they're wicked. And so when you're demonic and you're wicked, you're not interested in promoting family values. You don't want to see a masculine, exceptional man who's married, who's been serving his community and serving his country. He is the enemy. Behind the Anglo-Saxon white man, it is the heterosexual Black male that is the threat. That's who they want to take out. And I'm so grateful for the heterosexual Black man because overwhelmingly, they led the charge in the Black community to not install and not vote for Kamala Harris because it wasn't good for the country. And sadly, many of them had to do it despite opposition. They took the arrows from all of the angry Black women that don't know which way is up. Vote against their own interests. A lot of these men had to say, I got to save her from herself because she's too stupid to know better. So I have to do this. Those same men saved us in Georgia from Stacey Abrams. They helped us shift the tide so that we didn't have to live under that matriarchal miscreant. And so I wanted to talk about these donations of $16,000 from this elderly couple that we're struggling to substantiate. Now, at the time of this video, as far as I know, the couple that was implicated in giving this money, so far the wife is like, I don't know nothing about that. My husband is traveling on business, but if you would leave this document, I will share it and show it to him. Now, she seemed like she was unaware, right? And then two, if she knew about it or even knew who Jasmine Crockett was, she'd have been like, well, yes, I know Jasmine, right? And she's a friend of the family, or we support her campaign, even though we live way out here in Plano, Texas. Sholdon is doing the Lord's work right now by not just explaining or showing us what he can offer, but by showing and shining the light on the corruption that is a part of Jasmine's platform. I think it's a good thing that we have a man running, because no shade. I don't want to see another woman going against Jasmine Crockett. I don't. Women, we are capable of doing a lot of things, but right now, this is an hour that a man is needed. We need a man in charge. Like, sometimes when daddy's been gone too long and the house is a wreck and in chaos, you just need him to come in and be like, all right, I'm here. Let's set things into order. And so I believe that the future of this country is going to depend upon men stepping back into their rightful place, and not only stepping back into their rightful place at the heads of their families, but once they do that, I do believe the culture will start to shift, because right now, the matriarchal squalor that we're living under, as much as we might be like, well, my mama raised me by herself and I turned out all right. Okay, well, that might be you, but the culture is saying different. Our community is overwhelmingly in the condition that it's in because of father absence. We have a lot of broken homes and disjointed families. And when you have disjointed families where the children, the vast majority, are raised by the mama, it's some deficiencies. And we're starting to see those deficiencies. And so tomorrow at 12 noon, I will be interviewing candidate Sholdon Daniels. He's going to tell you all about him and his vision for the 30th Congressional District. He wants to go to Washington to represent those constituents, bringing values that he believes are important for this country. And so I just wanted to highlight this corruption, allegedly. I've already had enough sharp criticism for Jasmine. And in terms of her behavior is so shameful and atrocious. It'd be different if she were a reality TV star on Love and Hip Hop. But this is Congress, right? Like, you're a state congresswoman, and if you just using all this colorful language to express yourself, when we know you know better. You know how to communicate when you want to, but for some reason, somebody told you that this is what the country needed in this hour. They needed an aggressive, foul-mouthed Black woman to lead the way. And we are saying, no, we don't want that. Now there's other foul-mouthed, aggressive, foul-mouthed women who like you, right? But I'll say this. I'm trying to be nice about this. There's a segment of our community that we don't want to claim. And it's the ones that like that behavior and thinks that, she's the bee's knees and the best thing since sliced bread. Those are the women that everybody, including men, overwhelmingly reject. So if the country is rejecting you and men are rejecting you, then they may sleep with you, but they are overwhelmingly rejecting you because they won't wife you, right? They won't wife you. They will sleep with you, but they won't wife you. America is saying we don't want that. We want someone to represent us that knows how to act. So if we got to vote you out to get that, that's what we're going to do. So I consider it an honor to bring Sholdon Daniels on the platform. We're going to record tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be a straightforward interview. I might sit with him for about an hour or a little less. I will ask him some hard-hitting questions. I have lots of questions and things that I want to know, but I think he'll be able to provide you guys with the answers needed to determine if you want to lend your support. We're not supporting him because he's Black. We want to support him because he's got a vision and he's got a worldview that we believe is going to echo the sentiment of the rest of America, and he's going to represent that district well. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Now, for this last segment, because we are at 9:57, and I'm going to get to a few super chats, and then we're going to close out the show with the religion of feminism. And I feel we need to talk about it, particularly after dealing with Jasmine Crockett. We definitely got to talk about it. But let me get to these super chats. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you would, go ahead and like this video, share it with your tribe. We are in the process of rebranding over here. I am going to miss the Standard of Truth podcast. I really am. That's where I cut my teeth and my roots are with that name. But I want to rebrand to Unshakable with April Chapman. I thought long and hard about that name, and I tried to come up with an adjective that thoroughly encompassed and described what I do here on this platform, but I just needed something a little shorter, like one word. And then I needed to brand my name. Why? I've been in airports. I have been in multiple cities all over this country, and people will be like, oh my gosh, hey, oh my gosh, I love your show. And then we take a selfie, and they'll be like, what's your name again? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You just identified me. You don't know my name. And that's when I realized, I was like, I don't even use my name enough. Like, I don't use my name enough. It's nowhere on the show anywhere. And I was like, I have to brand my name. So the channel name will change to April Chapman. And then the show will be Unshakable with April Chapman. So if you need to tag me, you can just use my name, and it'll be so much simpler than the Standard of Truth podcast. Like, that's just so long. It's just so long. And so let's get to the super chats. Let's see. What did we miss? Okay, who do we have? I'm trying to go so I don't miss them. Here we go. Hi, Shalise Owens. She said, hands doing a high five. High five to you, beautiful. Thank you so much for that super sticker. I'm grateful for your support showing up to the live chat tonight. I think that's the only one I missed. Okay, yeah. We're good. Okay, yay. All right. Next segment. I have a wonderful subscriber. And his name is Delvin. Shout out to you, Brother Arnold, you and your lovely wife. Thank you so much for all the support that you have shown me throughout the past 24 to 36 months. What I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about the religion of feminism. And let me just get this pulled up really quickly. I wanted to talk about this because, hold on, here we go. All right. I don't know what I'm doing. Lord have mercy. Did I do this right? I think I did. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out momentarily. Y'all, I have like 3 different, I'm trying to move a window from here over. I gotta pass this way. I have 3 monitors. Hold on. Gosh, I done lost the mouse. Where did it go? Okay, that's right there. Let me move it slow. No? Y'all done lost the mouse. Hold on. Okay, did that help? No. We're gonna get this right eventually. I don't know why it doesn't want to cooperate. I don't know. It doesn't want to. Just forget it. Oh well. All right. What we want to talk about now is Brother Arnold sent me this article, and it was on a blog, and it was talking about feminism as this dangerous pseudo-religion. And I wanted to talk about it because I believe feminism on some aspects or in certain aspects is a religion. Why? Because it is no longer about equality, just saying, hey, we just want to be recognized as equal image bearers with men. No. Now it is about power. It is about this resentment, the systematic dismantling of these power structures, and all of that. It pushes against biblical truth in terms of what God has revealed in his written word. And so I wanted to spend a few moments just talking about feminism and its destruction of the family and this religion. I'm calling it a religion in the sense that there's this systematized dogma that accompanies this worldview. And it starts with its own Genesis story, right? And so, all religions, they all have an origin story. Like in the God of the Bible and Christianity, we have an origin story that it starts with Genesis in the scriptures. And so because we have that, you'll find other world religions, they might have a different view, but they all have their own origin story. And so when it comes to feminism, I have here that it teaches that in the beginning there was like this matriarchal utopia. Now, I don't know ever in humanity where a matriarchal utopia ever existed. However, according to feminism, they paint this picture as if there was this egalitarian, nurturing society where the women were in charge, and it was just amazing until something happened. They claim where women were in charge and they were ruling with wisdom and fairness, as if. But then the fall of man came, right? They literally imply that when the patriarchy was invented by men, it was invented to oppress women, to strip them of power, and then to force them into domestic slavery. This is why you see so many women struggle and won't make their man a sandwich, because they're like, well, serving you is like being a slave, and I don't want to do that. Like, have you not heard that, where it's like something as simple as like, hey man, can you make me a sandwich? Make your own sandwich. You like right there. Like the turkey and the cheese is right there. And this is oppressive for you to make this sandwich? Okay, fine. And so just like we had a fall in the Garden of Eden, in this pseudo religion of feminism, they view the patriarchy and men being the head and over women, or just in charge of the family. They view that as some type of fall of man, and they consider it some sort of paradise lost. And so what I wanted to do was kind of contrast that, not as if you guys don't know this, but the problem with that is the Bible kind of outlines our actual Genesis story and the fall of man. And it started in the garden with rebellion, right? It was direct opposition to, hath God not said? Did God really say? We see in Genesis 1:27 where sin did not enter the world through male oppression, right? We have to at least correct that erroneous view. Sin entered the world because of rebellion. The God gave Adam and Eve a command. The serpent beguiled and deceived Eve. She ate of the fruit, then gave it to her husband, and then he ate it, and then everything just got all messed up. And so when we have sin entering the world, and not through this male oppression, what we notice that it represents this rebellion just against God's authority, because God had already laid down the law of what needed to be, and if you do this, you shall surely die. That's the rebellion that comes in. And so that leads me to a discussion on, is there a feminism gospel? Right? Is there a gospel of feminism that has gripped the culture, that has caused women to believe these lies? And I would argue that it is. One, when you saw the advent or the liberation of women, that right there was the precipice of this feminism gospel, right? So here's what, in the feminist gospel paradigm, here's what they promise. Feminism offers salvation, but not from sin. It is salvation from male authority and traditional gender roles. Now, we already know if God has spoken and laid down an order for his church and an order from the family, this is a perversion. In this gospel of feminism, everything is perverted. It's no longer sin is your problem. You've offended a righteous and a holy God, and you need to be made alive in Christ Jesus. No, you need salvation because men are the problem. They're oppressive, right? They're oppressing you. The patriarchy is the problem, and we got to tear it down. And so therefore, this gospel of feminism, it offers or preaches, I should say, that true freedom is not freedom from God's wrath and the curse of sin and death. No, it is freedom. Your freedom comes from rejecting your biblical femininity, rejecting motherhood, and rejecting submission in marriage. And instead, you must embrace radical independence. I do what I want to do. Can't nobody tell me nothing. I'm an independent woman, and I'm strong, and I'm a boss chick, and I'm a boss babe. You all of the things. You know what I'm talking about. It also includes that radical independence comes the sexual liberation, and then the career ambition. And when you put it all together, all of those things, you want those things above all else. The last thing you want to be is tethered or tied to some man. Because in the gospel of feminism, your salvation, your freedom, your liberation comes from rejecting God's biblical design and order and to embrace this instead. And so what I want to do, we got to have a reality check, right? Why? Because this alleged deception, if you will, of salvation, where has that led us? Right? What have we gotten in exchange for embracing the gospel of feminism? Well, according to studies, you have liberal feminist women. Here's what they report. These are the results. Since we talk about results all the time, and that's how you can measure the success of something, they report higher rates of loneliness, depression, and dissatisfaction compared to conservative women who embrace marriage and family. The promise of freedom has left many women broken, disillusioned, and angry. So you have a whole generation of women who believed the lie, right? They were converted via the proclamation of the gospel of feminism. They yielded themselves wholeheartedly to it. And what do we end up seeing? Disillusioned women who are angry and broken and lonely. Don't forget that part. They were promised freedom. They were promised that no one is holding you down because marriage is oppressive and children are slavery. And if you want children, you can do so by freezing your eggs and just get his sperm, but you don't need his headship and his covering and his leadership. You don't need that. Just get the seed, right? Well, who are some of the key players? Just like in scripture, where we have the apostles and our prophets, and then in the old covenant, we had the Levitical priesthood. In this religion of feminism, they have their high priest too. And so there are some key figures that I want to identify, and I want to identify these individuals by name and their teachings. And you have here Mary Daly. She's considered a radical feminist theologian. And this woman argued for a world without men. I'm like, you got to be out your mind. Listen, I can't imagine my world without men. That's just not a world I want to live in. They've civilized the world. Like, I need men, right? I need someone to build the roads and the bridges and trash and all. It's just all kinds of things. Not that they just exist to serve me, but men play such an important role in the world. The idea that someone can argue for a world without men tells me they are absolutely lost. You bat crazy if you can advocate for something like that. But this woman did, Mary Daly. She argued for a world without men, and she saw masculinity as a force of evil. Like, I don't even know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that. Then we had Andrea Dworkin. This, right now I'm going through like the priests and the prophets of this religion of feminism. Andrea claimed that all heterosexual relationships were oppressive. These are some really broken women. All heterosexual relationships are oppressive. Then we had Carol Gilligan. Carol pushed the idea that women's morality was superior to men's. So now what she's doing is she's perverting what the scriptures teach about all of us being fallen sons and daughters of Adam with a sin nature. And now she's pitting the man against the woman and saying that the sinful nature of a man is somehow a man's sin nature is superior, and the woman's morality is superior, and his fallenness and his sinful and wickedness is somehow worse. Now, obviously, all of these things can be argued in scripture. Like we can go to multiple texts to disprove this. But right now, I'm just going through some of the dogma and the teachings that these individuals espoused. Then you had Monique Whitting, and she declared that true liberation required rejecting heterosexuality altogether. I'll repeat that again. Monique Whitting declared that true liberation required rejecting heterosexuality altogether. Remember how I told you that the results of this religion yields loneliness, depression, and dissatisfaction? Are we shocked? Are we shocked that this is the result? In addition to them having their priests and prophets, they have sacred texts. These feminists, they serve as the high priest of the movement. So those are about 4 individuals, but within the African American community, we have tons of individuals who push this harmful rhetoric. And unfortunately, our sacred texts, I would throw in Essence magazine. I probably wouldn't have thrown Ebony probably in its early stages, no, because it highlighted, Ebony and Jet celebrated just Black culture. But definitely Essence magazine, I would say I would throw in there is one of the feminist sacred texts that push this feminist religion. These texts, or should I say propaganda that push this feminism, typically they go unchallenged in academia and the mainstream media. And the thing is, if you disagree with this, they will label you a heretic. So just like in a religion where we have heterodoxy and orthodoxy, people who teach teachings that are in line with mainstream Christianity, and then those who teach something on the outskirts that has been deemed heresy through church history, if you go against the mainstream ideology of feminists and feminism, they will label you as a heretic. And so here's the utopian goal of this religion of feminism. Feminism promises a world where hierarchy is eliminated, gender roles are abolished, and women are freed from the constraints of marriage. Think about how many people you know who destroyed their homes and broke up their marriages because they thought it was going to be freedom out there. For example, I would argue that an individual who bought into this lie that has major regrets is Tia Mowry. Tia Mowry, for whatever reason, allowed the culture, right, the friend girls to get in her ear and convince her that she didn't need Corey. Girl, you making more money than him. He's just dead weight. You tired of pulling the weight. Forget all of the value that he added to that family and how he loved his wife and loved his children. She believed the lie. And it wasn't less than a year of her being out in them streets before she realized that she was not about that life. And that life at home with her husband was so much more better and peaceful and safe and stable than the instability out in these streets with these Negroes that don't care about you. She had to learn that the hard way. But the thing about it is the utopian goal is that they promise you that these kids and the marriage and the mundaneness of home, that's bad. It's oppressive. You feel stifled. You feel restrained or constricted. But when you live in your authentic self, break up your home, get rid of the dead weights, graduate from your marriage, they promise that's their heaven, that's the freedom, but it's a trap. It's a lie. Here's the reality of equality. Despite claims that feminism seeks equality, it actually often promotes female superiority, right? It claims that they just want to be equal, just like Eve, who wanted to rule over Adam, right? It's the same thing, but they do it under, no, we just want to be equal. No, you really want to dominate and control the man. I have here that we constantly hear women say that they need more women in leadership, and that if we do that, it'll lead to a more kinder, more just world. But when do we ever see that? Let's just look at these major cities where we either have a female DA, a female mayor, a female police chief. Look at the chaos. These women they are in control of nothing. Everything is out of control, just like their lives are. Their lives are out of control and out of order. Are we shocked that the areas where they allegedly have control and leadership is out of order too? I'm not saying that women can't lead. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we have plenty enough examples to demonstrate that it's an overemphasis and it's an imbalance in this female leadership, and it's leading to matriarchal squalor. It is. That's just a fact. So that's the utopian goal. Feminist damnation. If you reject feminism, right, they will cast you into feminist hell. And what they'll do is they'll brand you as a misogynist, meaning you hate women. So if you are not on board with the feminist agenda, you hate women, and they'll call you a misogynist or pick me. I've been called a pick me plenty of times, and I wear it as a badge of honor. Or they'll say you are an internalized misogynist, right? So like if you're a man, you must atone for the sins of your manliness by renouncing your masculinity. See, they want to label your masculinity as toxic, right? So if you basically don't let her have her way and do what she want to do, you're a toxic man. That's where we are. So let's talk a little bit about the intolerance and cancel culture. Like every cult, right now we're talking about this religion of feminism, where it leads, what some of its tenets are, how you can identify whether you're being a good feminist and adhering to the rules, or if you're at risk of being rejected and labeled a heretic. Like every cult, feminism demands loyalty. So like, for example, let's say you're a married woman and you got a bunch of feministic, liberal, progressive, Marxist-minded single chicks as friends. Eventually, one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to convert you and you're going to be like them, or you're going to convert them. And that rarely happens. It's kind of like birds of a feather flock together. You can continue to try to keep the matriarchal miscreants in your circle if you want to, but what's going to end up happening is somebody's going to corrupt somebody. They demand absolute loyalty. And so these feminist believers, right, they don't just encourage, but they're required to purge the dissenters. So if you're in the group, like, for example, let's just use Tia Mowry as an example. If she's got a lot of single, feminist, independent-minded girlfriends and she was like the only single woman, there's a reason why Tia and Tamara as twin sisters are not as close as they used to be. Tamara's married, got a stable home and a marriage with some kids. And right now, Tia's whole little situationship with her life is toxic. And so as she's like, this is my twin and I love her, but I have to break away from you, because what's going to end up happening is you're not in the mind frame to listen to any sort of wise counsel from me. So I can't have you corrupting me. So I'm going to have to break away from you. But what happens is, in the feminist paradigm, they will purge the dissenters. So and this is how it looks, whether it's canceling those who question the gender wage gap, or destroying and tearing down men who won't bow the knee to the radical feminism. That's typically what it looks like. They have to get rid of the dissenters. And so here are some of those. We've seen real life consequences happen as a result of women adopting and being baptized, I'll say, into the religion of feminism. We've got like real life consequences. So we've seen careers ruined, lives destroyed, and even women shunned simply for rejecting feminist ideology. Think about how many of your friends walked away from you when you decided that, you know what, I think I want to be married, or I think I might want to be a mom. And they're like, wait a minute, that's not the plan. We supposed to be hot girl summer, ride or die forever. And it's like, well, I love y'all, but I don't want to ride or die with y'all. Like I want to ride or die like with a family, right? They will purge you from the group. They will purge you. And yet, feminism presents itself. This is the deception. It presents itself as the movement of freedom and choice until you choose that you actually want stability of a family and a bona fide marriage with a man who loves you and a man that you respect and some kids. You start advocating for that and see how quick they switch up on you. Just saying. But now that I've given you a little introduction into the religion of feminism, let's look at God's design for how women are to be. Unlike feminism, biblical Christianity doesn't view men as the enemy, right? Men are not the enemy. Women and men are not in this constant battle for power. There is this wonderful, homogenous, complementarian relationship that men and women are designed to function in when everybody plays their role. Right? So if Christ is the head of his church and man is the head of women, for us to think that we can pervert that and usurp that and think we're going to get favorable outcomes means that we are deceived. And so in biblical Christianity upholds the dignity and worth of women. We are incredibly valuable. We are equal with men, but we are different in function, and there is nothing wrong with that. Like I said, the complementary roles that men and women play when they're in covenant relationship with one another, it is a reflection of Christ and his church. And it is a beautiful synergy that when everyone is playing their role, God is glorified and he's honored in that. And so true fulfillment comes when women embrace their God-given roles and reject the religion of feminism, because true femininity, I know that this religion promises fulfillment, but I've already explained to you what the outcomes tend to be. And it's the bondage that results from adopting this worldview. If you catch it early and repent and run and shun that, I believe that God is so merciful. He's been merciful to so many of us who actually at one point adopted this worldview and thought that this was the way to go. But I will tell you that the bitterness, the resentment, all of the things that are the opposite of biblical femininity can be enjoyed and experienced, but you have to at least acknowledge and recognize that you haven't been doing it God's way, and you need to submit to his lordship. Because here's the deal. A woman who won't submit to the lordship of Jesus, she's not going to submit to a man. She's going to constantly always push and fight against whatever that man got going on and what he says and what he wants. And it's because she's not submitted to the lordship of Jesus first. This is the distinguishing factor between biblical Christianity and someone who claims to be a Christian but has adopted a feminist mindset. femininity and the future is female, if that's what's on her mind, she might be a pseudo Christian, but totally sold out to the religion of feminism. Because biblical femininity, you gonna get joy and peace. You get protection and provision. There's so many spiritual blessings that are a result, and then just blessings in the fullness of time, like in real life that you get to experience when you adopt God's way of structuring your life. And so here's my final takeaway. At the end of the day, I am arguing that feminism absolutely does operate like a religion. But the difference between the religion of feminism and Christianity is there's no grace, there's no mercy, there is no redemption of sin, and there's no great exchange of the burden that you feel for some other righteousness that's not your own. You don't get that in feminism. The so-called path to salvation in this religious paradigm, it leads to death and destruction. We see the brokenness that it yields in families. We see the brokenness that it yields in societies. We see the death that it yields when women completely devote themselves to this religion and they adopt the lies of womb assassination and abortion. There's so many detrimental outcomes and effects of being devoted to the religion of feminism that at some level, eventually, loyal adherents who end up dying adherents, they know that they believe the lie. But like Romans 1 says, they suppress the truth in their unrighteousness. And they just double down on it. And so when we fail to embrace God's design, these are just some of the implications that happen as a result. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. If you've seen feminism operate as like this pseudo religion, and if you've seen it in your life and how you had to denounce it and just completely reject it, I'd love to hear you share some of your thoughts of wisdom with the live chat in the comments below. Other than that, I just wanted to give a quick little overview of it. And I'm grateful for Brother Arnold for sending me that article. I thought it was so interesting in the insights that it shared. I had never looked at feminism as a religion, but I can actually see the tenets and the dogma and its path of salvation. It has like a whole little soteriological paradigm that absolutely mirrors the lie and the deception that Eve adhered to in the garden. So other than that, you guys, I'm about to skedaddle because it's 10:30. I have been up since 5 o'clock. And the reason why I was up at 5 o'clock, y'all, I was on Newsmax 2. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share my insight on that platform. But they keep getting earlier and earlier. Like, but first it was 9, then it was 8:30, then it was 8 o'clock. Today they like, oh, can you hop on at 7:15? I'm like, all right now. Y'all keep playing. It's early, okay? I'm self-employed. Y'all know self-employed people don't be getting up that early. But I need to get up that early. So this is actually a blessing in disguise. So I'm not complaining, but I am sleepy because I'm not used to getting up that early. I got up at 5 because I had to be on camera at 7:15. And so if you have not watched that video, I dropped it earlier today. I was on Newsmax 2. And y'all, they do not tell you in advance. Like sometimes they tell you in advance what they're going to talk about, and then they switch it up, and you'll be like, this is not what I was prepared to talk about. And so I got caught off guard with the Department of Education conversation. And when the liberal opponent gave his rebuttal, I needed to reply back, and I didn't get an opportunity to. I really didn't get an opportunity to. So that was my bad. But you don't want to take over the segment. You know, you want to be a consummate professional. And if they don't acknowledge you to give a rebuttal, you kind of just, it is what it is. It's limited segment. So I'm grateful for that. A few announcements before I let you guys go. I told you guys about Black Six Night of Faith that is happening on April the 5th. It is a few weeks away. I have dropped a registration link in the description box of this video. I would love for you guys to come out. Black Six is very near and dear to my heart. And Night of Faith is an opportunity for the faith community of Blexic to kind of get together and hear from some amazing speakers. They have a panel discussion. Virgil Walker is the keynote for this event. I attended the Night of Faith in Detroit a few weeks ago, and it was really, really nice. And so we want a big turnout for this Night of Faith events. If you click the link in the description, you can register for it. It's going to be held at the Embassy Atlanta, which is in Austell, west of Atlanta. So if you're in Birmingham, come on out. If you are in that's at Birmingham. Yes, Birmingham. It's right across the way. An hour, you'll be into the state easy. It's gonna take me longer to get to Austell than it will take for people from Birmingham to get to Austell. Isn't that sad? But it's just Atlanta traffic. But that's where I'll be April the 5th. So I want you to register and come on out to that. It is free. There's no cost to attend, and they're going to feed you. So free food and free registration. You just show up. I'll be there. I'd love to meet you. I'm working to get my brother Chad O. Jackson in the house. That is not confirmed, but he might be there. We shall see. And so that's the Blexic Night of Faith event. And then next week, Turning Point USA is having their Pastor Summit, the 18th through the 20th. So if I do some content next week, it's going to be quick and short, and I'll pop in. I might do a live stream. I am covering that event, the Pastor Summit. I am interested in talking to our faith leaders, hearing, their ears that's in the street. I want to have gospel-centered conversations. I understand that politics is important. I do. However, I am interested in hearing some gospel-centered conversations about how, everybody wants to know, how can we impact the culture for Christ? And to me, this is not hard, right? It's real simple. We lead with the gospel. And so since gospel preaching is so deficient in a lot of our churches, I'm interested in talking to pastors and faith leaders in this space to find out, what they're experiencing in terms of church attendance, what type of evangelistic outreach they've got going on, what's on the horizon for them, and then introducing you guys, my audience, just to some biblically sound voices in that space that was very instrumental in changing the cultural tide of our country to where we were allowed to at least adopt some conservative values and then to protect religious liberty in this nation. So the 18th through the 20th, which is next week, I'll be MIA. And then tomorrow is Sheldon's interview. And then I've got some other interesting guests that I'll be bringing on shortly. But right now, I need to get ready for bed. And yeah, because I'm tapping out. So I love you guys with the love of the Lord. Until next time, you guys, grace and peace.